This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
Good evening, and of course, this is the continuation of the 5S Blissipline that we have wanted to achieve. And of course, this is your one and only Dear Post speaking, and I have forgot to activate the background piece courtesy of Joaquim Carud. And of course, with a lovely song or background music piece that we have wanted to, of course, we have to discuss more of the 5S discipline measures that most of us Filipinos might be very difficult. Oh my goodness me. Very difficult to attain. Especially if, last week's episode, I have been discussed with regards to the 5S discipline measures. But of course, why is it very, very difficult for us to implement such thing? And of course, most of you, even my classmates and professors, would ask me like, what are you doing here and why you're going to stay here and rearrange all of the tables and chairs? Well, let's face this. In this session, I'll tell you more of the story in which why 5S discipline would be much effective to attain. And of course, we have to, read the definition of the discipline. Once again, it says, coming from the Codicinion Urban Dictionary, then it says, quote and quote, the combination of bliss and discipline. So, this applies for the physical distancing protocol that are very hard to maintain. Mind you guys, why is it so hard to maintain that protocols? Well, in that case, there would be a loosening of the guard for certain people or certain persons. And of course, as a safeguard, not only for myself but also for everybody else, I have to wear as many pieces of personal protective equipment as possible, especially the face mask, face shield, eye shield, and even gloves that I have attempted last 8 December. But sadly, the gloves that I should wear supposedly was stopped. And they would say, it's so already to wear those pieces of gloves or even the face shield or face mask or but not in this case, wherein the pandemic disaster is still ongoing. Instead, for the Blissipline sake, we have to use this context in order for us to define what's being in the now or the present, which is the bliss as you strive towards achieving your goals or the discipline part. You know, if you have noticed the logo recently on the DP24 social media pages across the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and even Kumu as well, you know what? There's a message that says, observe physical distancing and 5S discipline. And of course, switching into the online version, let's admit this, it is too hard to implement unless we have to do something in order to prepare everything. And what is in accordance to the plan? Well, let's face this. DP24, or previously known as Dear Paul 24, have been started previously, especially with the context of the consistent 5S discipline measures, and the description has been updated accordingly. And of course, it got started rather as a live stream production in a simple format, especially if you're going to have some sort of a hybrid or the combination of the on-site and the online, whereas it's very hard at first to implement, especially if you're going to stream and even serve at the same time at the FEASTSMDasma. And by the way, shout out to all FEASTSMD Media Ministry. And of course, streaming also of the live events, especially in the university, whereas there are instances wherein they are still reluctant to the change. But of course, COVID-19 pandemic disaster have forced all of us to switch into all online stream, or the so-called live stream, podcast, and even live sessions. And since the hybrid is not possible for the COVID-19 pandemic disaster, we have switched already into the all online version of this live session, particularly in this DPinFocus live session. Next week would be more of the best of 2020 despite the pandemic that I would like to share it with you. And since there are instances of the lack of 5S Blissipline implementation, then, in my turn, there is a need for us to change those habits and even implement this step by step with the correct procedures. And also with the introduction of DP24 Radio as the podcast channel on Spotify, iTunes, Overcast, G Podcast, and other podcast providers. Not to mention that it is simulcasted also on Anchor.fm as the origin, and even TuneIn and Amazon Podcast. And yes, of course, there are so many ways to put up such live stream. And of course, with the thumbnails that I have chosen to decide on the design, maybe by the next year it would be more improving or more improved DP24 live session, because DPinFocus and DPonreflections and even Mapping 101 Thursdays will have a brand new cover design. Especially, I'm still using the simple PowerPoint presentation as the cover design, and now with the mixture of the hybrid, which is the Canva and the PowerPoint softwares that I have used, then it is time for us to move into the next phase of the live session. And of course, we have to remember everything that not at all times we have to keep up with the current practices, and we have to do most of the transition phasing. And I have received an update from the Commuters PH or Commuters of the Philippines Facebook group page that there is a transition already. And for those who are watching here through DP24 GTV YouTube channel and DP24 and DP24 ETV Facebook pages, kindly listen to this up. We have to switch into the standardized hashtag Commuters Asks before the end of the year. Otherwise, the admins will no longer accept any sort of questions that may be asked upon outside of the designated thread. Of course, with that join in with the evolution coaches, I have learned something that it would boost some sort of 5S discipline measures, and at this time I'm still into hiatus, but shout out to Coach MJ Ayoki Coach Reg and Coach Dance, and also Coach Chicoy of the Elevate Coaches, Coach Ross of A-Quest, and also upon transitioning to the new normal, better normal, we have to change everything. We have to avoid walking on the wrong way, especially on the wide corridor spaces within the malls and sidewalks as well. And also, please avoid left lane blocking or hogging, especially if you're driving or in the escalator, as elevators are restricted only for persons with disabilities, senior citizens, pregnant women, and children in strollers, and even the cargo as well, for safety's sake. And yes, 5S Blissipline would be considered a new normal way or new normal, better normal way of life in this pandemic and beyond, that we have to change everything. This December, next week would be more like of the moments and memories that I would share with you, the best of 2020, the pre-pandemic and the pandemic version. Of course, partner Kato Kayo have noted already with regards to, there's a need for placement of the soundtrack composition credits. And of course, I have not yet started the ticker. So let's see. And in this day, let me lower the music or soundtrack that we have to remember on this day, that the Philippine Airlines have suffered previously the bombing disaster en route to Japan from Manila, Cebu, connecting flight. And of course, the Philippine Airlines 434 that got out of control. All of the controls got severely damaged before they have lands or before they have landed safely. Two pilots have to decide on what could it be the maneuvering, and the only differential thrust would be used for turning such 747 aircraft to safety. And as a result, one of the passenger, who is also a Japanese national, died. And many others got hurt. And so, we would have a moment of silence. And good evening to all of you. We have concluded the moment of silence recently. And of course, that's so sad to hear or to remember such disastrous events. But of course, we as a Filipino could be more resilient enough, but not on this case. We have to take care of ourselves, most especially for the mental health, particularly to those with disabilities. Not only on this day, but also there would be better days to come. And of course, the soundtrack is courtesy of Reiki Inspired. And yes, of course, we're still at the 5S Blissipline Part 2. Whereas I have initiated also the cleanup measures elsewhere across the city or municipality, and even in the large event gatherings. The last conference that I have attended last 2019, both at the SMX, no, Mall of Asia Arena instead, or rather, that I have to volunteer for some sort of a clean-up measures after the Grand Feast. That's Foxtrot Echo Alpha Sierra Tango. And of course, if I could say this something, then there is a need for a widespread change of our habits. Whether what it is prescribed or not, we have to start the 5S discipline within ourselves, within our circle of family and friends, and even with your special someone. And so, to my future self, if you're going to, or if you have watched this, surely and or should I say, I'm surely that you could be proud of yourself. And that being said is that this episode will be most remembered by future family that you have established, and even the feast light or feast that you have planned, and even the businesses, including the transportation business that you have finally established, might as well have gone into building something like the tower building that would benefit more businesses and even the tourists and commuters as well. And so, with the 5S discipline that we are going to implement, then here are the steps to take. First up, you have to plan it first. Second, do some logistical work. This is required for most of the planned surprises or construction or businesses that you're going to establish. The third one is to have a sincere heart. And of course, it has to be combined with the time, effort, and even consistency. This is what I have learned partly from the vlog of Brother Juancho Trivino. And of course, if you don't have any idea, that's the half of the One Choice Love Team. And now, he's married to Sis Joyce Trivino. back at the history once again. If I could repeat this quotable quote once again, hurt people hurt. And that being said, is that the powerful advice that she have given to all of us, along with the attendees or the class attendees at that time, last November 2019. And of course, there's a switch already with the perspective that I would vow to be a long time learner. Especially when it comes to matters of the heart, the mind, and of course we have to include some sort of sacrifices that we need to take. Of course, DPinFocus, DPonreflections, but no. But DPinFocus and Mapping 101 Thursdays will be on a season break from Christmas to New Year until the final examination. But this episode gets concluded. Join with me next time on DP24 in Focus live session next week for us to share some greatest memories that we have done already. So good night, everyone. And always remember to be safe, be well, stay sane, and as always, you are loved. And of course, if you're watching here on YouTube, thank you so very much. And I'll see you next week. But before I let you go, DP24 in Focus live session is also powered by DP24 Media and StreamYard. And don't forget to, click those videos as shown on either this one or this one. And don't forget to subscribe, tap the notification bell or click the notification bell so that you could be notified if I'm going to have some sort of live stream and some scheduled sessions. And yes, of course, we have to move it on for a better living.